Big money, new maps, and the highest stakes in the country. From the race for Attorney General to the showdown for Senate, Battleground Texas is your front row seat. We're talking with the candidates, analyzing the data, and fact-checking the commercials. Don't just watch the news. Understand the strategy. The fight for the Lone Star State starts here. This is Battleground Texas.
Hello, I'm Greg Groogan in Houston.
I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas.
I'm Rudy Koski in Austin, and this is Battleground Texas.
Before we get into the big story this week and Senator Cornyn's flip-flop on the filibuster, let's look at some recent polling. A new post-primary survey from Public Policy Polling shows the GOP civil war between Senator John Cornyn and Attorney General Ken Paxton is taking a toll. The data shows both men are currently in a statistical tie with Democratic nominee James Talarico. Talarico leads Cornyn by 1 point and Paxton by 2, both well within the margin of error. Perhaps most alarming for the incumbent, nearly 1 in 4 Trump voters say they would not support Cornyn in a general election. Mind you, the PPP surveyed just 576 Texas voters on March 4th and 5th with a margin of error of 4%. However, even going back to the University of Houston poll in January, Paxton was just 2 points ahead of Talarico and Cornyn just 1. Now let's talk about Senator Cornyn, who now says he's open to scrapping the Senate filibuster if it helps pass the Save America Act, which would require identification to register to vote and cast your ballot. In an op-ed Wednesday, Cornyn blamed Democrats for blocking the bill and said Senate rules may need to change to get it to the president's desk. We talked with SMU political science professor Matthew Wilson about Cornyn's move and what it could mean to his race with Paxton.
I think it sends a message that a couple of things, that Senator Cornyn obviously is in a bitter primary runoff fight and that he desperately wants and needs President Trump's support to pull through in that effort. But it also signals, I think, a shift in thinking on the part of a lot of mainstream Republicans on Capitol Hill that Democrats are going to destroy the filibuster if and when they ever take control of the Senate. And given that there is no chance of Democrats preserving it when they're in the majority, that Republicans preserving it now is a sucker's bet, that essentially it is unilateral disarmament and that there's no reason to limit their own lawmaking potential if Democrats openly say that they will take the step if and when they have the ability to. So I think the combination of those two things underlies Cornyn's decision. Cornyn would like Trump's endorsement sooner rather than later. He would like the pressure to be unequivocally brought to bear on Ken Paxton to get out of the race. Trump has signaled that a condition of that support is getting on board with this effort to pass the voting reforms, and that necessitates getting rid of the filibuster. So these things clearly are related, and that's the strategic part of it, quite apart from the substantive argument over whether preserving the filibuster is a good idea or not. The reality is, if we look on Capitol Hill, there are a lot of hypocrites when it comes to the filibuster. There are a lot of people on both the Democratic and Republican side who have flip-flopped their positions. Chuck Schumer, who is right now heading up the Democratic use of the filibuster to block these election reform measures, has in the past talked about how the filibuster is deeply flawed and undemocratic, and he supported getting rid of it. So lots of Republicans and Democrats have switched sides on this question, so is not alone in that respect. All that said, whenever somebody changes their position publicly on an important question like that, it is incumbent on them to explain clearly what has changed, why they no longer feel the way they once did. And I think that's why he tried to get out in front of this by writing this op-ed and laying out clearly all of his reasons for shifting his stance. It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because prior to this, Ken Paxton was criticizing Cornyn for not doing this, for not backing it into the filibuster. Now he has backed it into the filibuster, and Paxton is criticizing him for that. So it's really, from the standpoint of what the Paxton campaign is going to say. So this isn't really about Ken Paxton in any direct sense. This is very much about President Trump and what President Trump wants to see happen on Capitol Hill. And we'll see how it plays in that context. It's important to understand the logical rationale for why Cornyn says he takes the position that he does, is that he firmly believes, as do a growing number of Republicans on Capitol Hill, that Democrats are going to get rid of the filibuster whenever they have the opportunity to do so. So given that the filibuster will never, therefore, constrain a Democratic majority, the thinking is, why let it constrain a Republican majority? Unless you have bipartisan commitment to keeping it, there's no reason for one party to hamstring itself by keeping that rule in place if the other party isn't going to do so if they're in power.
Well, as Matthew mentioned, Ken Paxton went right after Senator Cornyn with several posts on X saying, you attacked the talking filibuster as not feasible days ago. In October, you refused to help the president abolish the filibuster and said it's a non-starter. Texas deserves better than someone who only does the right thing when desperately trying to save himself. And reposting an article about the change of heart with the words, try not to get whiplash. All right, we have a lot more on this, and the new AI attack ads that claim to use James Talarico's own words against him. That's next on Battleground.
Welcome back. AI definitely made its way into multiple campaign ads this primary election season, and one this week has many talking. Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, and runoff candidate so far, reposted a tweet from the National Senate Republican Committee, and it shows James Talarico in an AI way reading some of his past tweets. Take a look.
And now a dramatic reading of James Talarico's most memorable tweets.
Oh, I remember this one. Radicalized white men are the greatest domestic terrorist threat in our country.
White man.
So true. So true. Oh, I love this one too. The Texas Capitol can be a hostile environment for our trans neighbors. Our office is the first in the history of the Capitol to add pronouns to our official business cards. It's a small way to tell trans Texans, you are welcome here.
Pronouns.
Oh, this one is touching. Over and over, Christians use scripture to justify bullying trans kids. I told them in my faith, God is non-binary.
#TXLedge.
There, but for the grace of God, go I. As a white man, I'm susceptible to the same radicalization.
Now, Talarico took to X responding, saying, quote, they're scared of the movement we are building. They're going to throw everything they have at us. They're going to call me a radical leftist. They're going to call me a fake Christian. They're going to call our momentum un-Texan and un-American. They'll call us a threat. The only truth is we are a threat. We're a threat to their corrupt system. I want to bring back Rudy Koski in Austin, Greg Groogan in Houston. Guys, Greg, you up first. I mean, in this age of social media, there's a receipt for that, and now Republicans are digging them up.
Yeah, absolutely. And Talarico supporters are certainly fired right up and spoiling for a fight. This week we posted an example of an historic Talarico soundbite likely to be repeated by Republicans, in which he now famously says that our border should be a welcome mat for our neighbors. Within 24 hours, a virtual barrage of clearly orchestrated outrage from the candidate's supporters was unleashed, protesting the fact that we omitted Talarico also saying there should be a lock on the door. Note to James, and for the record, nearly all of those messages included decidedly unchristian slurs and obnoxious insults. Here's my point. Team Talarico is mobilizing to downplay and rationalize every overtly hyper-progressive policy position the state representative has taken in his public life in a clear bid to keep independent and moderate voters from giving him the Heisman come November And one more thing, winning this nomination clearly involved arm's-length collaboration with deep-pocketed super PACs, the same PACs Talarico says he wants to ban. Two phrases come to mind: the end justifies the means, and do what I say, not what I do. Guys?
Rudy Koski, I mean, what do you make of this whole digging up old talking points from Talarico?
Well, first of all, in regards to the ad, it's hilarious. You know, the undertone pronouns that come in after he reads it was hilarious. It reminds me of another mainstream commercial. But, you know, getting back to the overall thing, Greg is spot on. You know, we've all covered James Talarico, and I think we all can agree that he is one of the nicest guys you could ever meet under the state Capitol dome, which is why he initially appeals and attracts moderate voters. He didn't rant and rage on House committee hearings or during floor debates. His points were usually talked about with a measured and direct voice. The problem is the positions that he has taken at the Capitol and on the campaign trail lately are very hard left. After voters are being reminded about that. It's the same problem Democrats would have had if they had Jasmine Crockett winning the nomination. Remember Crockett traveling down from Dallas I-45 to Houston, campaigning against Sean Theory's re-election bid, all because of Theory's vote supporting things like a ban on child sex change procedures. You know, these attacks then ugly, now ugly, and it cost Theory her House seat, and as a reflection of the Democrat Party's platform. So, Greg, you're right. Talarico and other Democrats down the ballot, they're going to be hit by Republicans posting things like they're wolves in sheep clothing, and that they're pitched to moderates, nothing more than a modern-day Trojan horse. Stephen?
Greg, take us a break.
All right, still to come on Battleground Texas, a look ahead to the coming fight to lead the Lone Star State as governor.
Welcome back to Battleground Texas. I'm Rudy Koski. The November stage is set in the race for governor, and the money is definitely on the incumbent side. Governor Greg Abbott enters the general election with a staggering $106 million war chest as he guns for a record-breaking fourth term. State Representative Gina Hinojosa reports just short of $2 million. Greg, that said, she's using social media to go after Abbott nonstop, right?
Yeah, Rudy, clearly school choice is going to be a bellwether issue in this race, and you both reported on new numbers out of the comptroller's office indicating that so far anyway, the lion's share of applications for the $1 billion in taxpayer-funded stipends have come from the families of students already attending private schools. Stephen, is this going to be a problem for the governor if that trend continues?
I mean, it can be, and we really have to see how much information is going to be out there before, you know, this election. Families find out this summer if they are selected, but we really got to see what the stats say, because Democrats are going to drive that home. If a vast majority of the people receiving this are already in private schools, Democrats are going to hammer that home, but I don't know if that's the message to win the governor's mansion in November.
All right, Rudy, you predicted there were going to be a whole bunch of hacked off people after this first round of vouchers were awarded. Either families left out or critics who claim this was always a thinly veiled rebate for Texans already attending private schools. Bottom line, can this be a vote-shifting issue for Hinojosa come November?
I think the risk, Greg, is still there. Initial reports on the raw numbers for the applications that you mentioned were presented to back up that argument that the kids, the rich kids, not the needy, would benefit from this program. But, you know, those numbers were, as you mentioned again, applications, not the actual awards. So it's still going to be somewhat of a wait-and-see situation right now, but I think regardless of who gets a school voucher, and let's call it a voucher because that's what it is, we know the money's limited. Election day outrage may be based, though, on who and how big is that waiting list. Greg?
All right, Stephen, let's talk war chests. 100+ million versus 2 million. Now, I've been doing this 41 years, and I have never seen a candidate on the wrong side of that disparity prevail in a statewide race. Point being, how bad does Hinojosa need serious money to seriously contend?
Hinojosa definitely needs money, but what she also needs is a series of bad events to happen for the Republican Party. She needs gas prices to be the highest we've seen since the pandemic. She needs certain types of unemployment numbers to suddenly take a turn. This can't just be a school voucher campaign, because that's not an issue that's going to affect everyone. Everyone doesn't even have children. So she needs a series of bad things to happen that make the president look bad and Republicans look bad, because she's not going to outspend the governor, and national Democrats are not going to invest in Texas, at least not when it comes to the governor's race. They're throwing all of that money to James Talarico.
All right, Rudy, will lack of greenbacks be Hinojosa's holdback once the Abbott juggernaut gets rolling?
Hey, look, we're in a brave new world. Social media is the thing now, right? So she's doing a great job getting her words out on social media. And let's face it, guys, a lot of the young voters right now, they're not watching TV, unfortunately. They're watching their smartphones. All this, they're watching us on smartphones. And that's where they're getting their news. So, she's playing it smart with her limited money to go after big broadcasting. Hit the social media and hit it hard. She's going to have to do that a lot. But I agree with Stephen. There's going to have to be a really big ripple effect to really push her across the threshold at the governor's mansion. Greg?
True that, Koski. Up next, we get back to some parting shots about what else is on our minds, and some of it might have absolutely nothing to do with politics. Welcome back. There's always a skirmish raging in some form or fashion on Battleground Texas, and folks here in Houston are still shaking their heads over the latest hijinks from lame duck Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo. Try to make this quick. Hidalgo, who was gifted nearly 10 grand worth of prime Houston rodeo tickets, attempted to bum rush herself and her entourage into the rodeo's exclusive dirt floor concert viewing area, a sold-out venue position for which she did not have tickets. What ensued was rodeo personnel, including folks at the highest level, blocking the judge, a process which turned confrontational, resulting in Hidalgo's escort out of both the arena and the stadium. The judge has since claimed she was manhandled in an incident driven by racism and sexism. Allegations, she says, will be confirmed by security video. Now, given her history of similar complaints and erratic behavior, many Houstonians are either rolling their eyes or, as I said before, just shaking their heads. Stay tuned. Rudy, what you got?
All right, guys, March Madness, from baseball to basketball, we could talk a lot about that, but I'll keep it with the March Madness and politics and moving beyond March. Greg, a lot of focus is on the late May primary runoffs, but there's another election day in May. On the 2nd, several towns, cities across Texas holding votes for mayor, council, school boards. This is a battleground that Democrats have quietly targeted in the past few cycles. There are some local races here in Central Texas that I'm watching to see if they will heat up over the next few weeks. Remember, small political battlegrounds can lead to bigger fights, especially when you're dealing with schools. Greg, Stephen.
All right, close us out, Stephen.
Rudy. Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of Rudy with some of these runoffs. Not necessarily the small races, but I'm talking about the congressional races down there in your neck of the woods, Greg. We got the Al Green versus Christian Menifee face-off, and up here in North Texas, we have the Julie Johnson versus Colin Allred face-off. Now, both of these seats are likely going to stay in Democrat hands, but it'll be interesting to see the dynamic of who wins those races. Allred, the former congressman who's been on the ballot now for 2 years in a row, will he take the throne in North Texas? And Christian Menifee, will it be a changing of the guard from an age standpoint? Will it be the young new guy or the person who's the seasoned vet in some people's opinions? So those are the things that I am looking for. Okay, to see this episode or any of our past ones, go to our station's YouTube channels.
And keep the conversation going on our social media accounts.
There's one thing you can bet the ranch on. Conflict will continue during this midterm year on Battleground Texas. And we will be talking about it in the weeks to come. See you soon via Con Dios.